Right, today is Sunday the 18th of April. It's been about a week since gyms reopened in the UK. I've not really followed any particular split. I've just kind of gone into the gym, done whatever, and kind of just got used to lifting weights again. There are certain exercises that you just never think that you would actually miss. Things like hamstring curls. Like, whoever thought that you would actually miss doing hamstring curls? But anyway, the fun is over, and as of Monday, I'm going to be starting a proper structured and programmed bulk. So I thought, what a perfect opportunity to document that process. So I thought I'd start this series by giving you a granular breakdown of exactly how I'm going to set up this bulk so that it'll be as successful as it should be. And because I'm an absolute saint, I'm not going to waste your time. I'll include timestamps below so you can skip to the part that is most relevant to you. So the first thing to address then is how much weight should you look to gain? Now, it's difficult to give a sort of generic look to add X amount of pounds on over Y amount of weeks. There are so many factors that influence how much weight you should look to gain over the 16-week period or however long your particular bulk is. Those factors include your age, your training age, your gender, your genetic predisposition for building muscle, and many others. Now, I don't like to give absolute rules because particularly with fitness, there are just way too many nuances, but without completely bottling it, and obviously I want to give you some sort of indication of what you should be aiming for, a good aim, I would say, is to look to add about 1% of your total body weight in pounds per month. So, calories and macros, people overcomplicate this, but it really is quite simple. I'm going to do this in sort of 3 stages just to break it down and make it a little bit easier. So, you want to start by working out what your TDEE is. That's your typical daily energy expenditure. That's what's also referred to as your maintenance calories. So, the amount of calories and the amount of energy that your body needs to get through everyday life and to sustain your body as it is currently. Now, there's a whole number of factors that influence this, such as, again, your age, your weight, your gender, your height, how active your job is or isn't, and a multitude of others. But the best way to get an accurate reading is just to go online, type in TDEE calculator, do about 4 or 5 of them. Obviously, I would favour the ones that ask for more information because they're going to give you a more accurate number. But once you've done 4 or 5 of them, take an average, and there you have your TDEE. Now, you've got your typical daily energy expenditure, your maintenance calories, and now what you want to do is add an appropriate surplus. And what do I mean by appropriate? Well, again, there are a million and one nuances, but the general principle is we want to be adding on enough calories to build muscle whilst keeping fat gain to an absolute minimum. In general, I would say try and be conservative because you don't want to slap on a massive surplus and then get 3 months into a bulk and realise that you're actually just horrendously overweight now, because that's not an ideal position to find yourself in. But conversely, don't be afraid to up your calories if you're not seeing the improvements and the gains in weight that you're expecting to see. And I've no doubt in my mind that I will make adjustments and changes to my calories over the next 16-week period during this bulk. And so that kind of brings me on nicely to the third, well, it's actually kind of covered it already, but I'll state it anyway. The third step to calculating your macronutrients is to just give it a go, see what happens, and don't be afraid to make adjustments where you feel that might be necessary. So the next thing to discuss is cardio. Should you continue to do cardio whilst on a bulk? In short, the answer is yes. Now, that might seem somewhat counterintuitive given that, of course, when you're doing cardio, you're increasing your energy output, your energy expenditure, which is consequently going to make it more difficult for you to get into and maintain a surplus. But I feel like there are 2 pretty good reasons why you want to continue to do cardio in spite of that. Firstly is from just a general health perspective. Cardiovascular fitness obviously is a fundamental part of just being an all-round healthy individual. And also adding on to that, so there are some exercises such as a lot of the compounds, deadlifts in particular, squats to an extent, that do require some element of cardiovascular fitness. If your cardio is just completely on its arse and you want to try and get, let's say for example, 10 reps of deadlift, but you're gassing out after 4, then obviously that's a problem. But even if you're not that fussed about that, you will thank yourself massively when you come to cut. If you think about it, if you've done no cardio for 16 weeks or however long your bulk is, when you come to cut and you want to implement cardio for the fat burning benefits rather than for the cardiovascular fitness benefits, you're not going to get as much out of those sessions in terms of the amount of calories that you can actually burn. So let's say, for example, you want to do a 30-minute run on a treadmill, but because your cardiovascular fitness is on its arse, you're literally gassing out after 10 minutes. Well, that's 20 minutes of calorie burning that you've missed out on there because your cardiovascular fitness isn't where it should be. So short answer, yep, continue to do your cardio even while you're on a bulk. So the slightly more exciting stuff then is training. Now, when it comes to training, there are 3 things really that you want to focus on. Firstly is progressive overload, secondly is your training frequency, and then thirdly is any potential periodization. So to start with progressive overload then, to give it a simple definition, progressive overload is simply adding more or doing more over time. Now, usually that equates to lifting more weight over time, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It might be the case that you perform more reps over time, you have a shorter rest period over time, or you have a greater range of motion. All those are also forms of progressive overload. So to give you an example of how you might implement that practically, let's say you start your push day off with a heavy bench press, and you're lifting 60 kilograms, 4 sets, 10 reps. Now, if you can complete all 4 sets with relative ease, the week after you might want to add on a small amount of weight. So what you might do is on your 4th and final set, find a small plate, maybe a 1.25 plate, and add that on one aside, and then do your final set with what would that now be 62.5 kilograms. So you've done 3 sets with 60 kilograms, and then on your final set, you've added 2.5, and you've done a set of 10 on 62.5. Now, if that went up with relative ease, then the week after, you would push it back a set. So you would look to do 2 sets on 60 kilograms, and then your 3rd set and your 4th set on 62.5 kilograms for 10. And then if that went up with relative ease, you would push it back again, and then the cycle just continues. So the second thing to cover on training is training frequency. Now, just to take it right back to basics, scientifically, the reason that we're in the gym lifting weights is to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, causing the muscle to be more susceptible to amino acids, and that's where all the gains are made. Now, we know from the studies that muscle protein synthesis spikes immediately after working out and plateaus back at normal levels 48 to 72 hours later. So if you train a body part on a Monday, by the Wednesday, Thursday, you're no longer really getting anything from that workout. So in order to maximize muscle growth, we want to choose a workout split that's going to allow us to train each muscle group twice a week. So then obviously what training split you're going to choose is going to largely depend on how many days a week you can train. And finally then, just to quickly touch on periodization. Periodization really is just changing elements of your training over time. So what people will typically do is spend defined periods of time in different rep ranges, and utilizing these different phases or mesocycles constitutes periodization. Now, there are 2 types of periodization: linear periodization and daily undulating periodization. Now, those both sound very complicated, but they're not. Essentially, linear periodization is spending a certain amount of time, typically 3 to 6 weeks, in a higher rep range, then spending another 3 to 6 weeks in a lower rep range, and so on and so forth. And all you're doing is decreasing the rep ranges and increasing the weight lifted. Now, daily undulating periodization, in contrast, is using various rep ranges within the same week. So, for example, if you're on a push-pull leg split, the first push-pull legs cycle would be, let's say, in a rep range of 8 to 12, and your second push-pull legs cycle within the same week would be, let's say, maybe a 6 to 8 rep range. Now, I'm certainly no authority on the science. I don't have any scientific letters in my name. I don't own a Bunsen burner. However, as far as I can tell from my own research, I can't seem to find any scientific literature that favours one type of periodisation over the other. So essentially, it just comes down to personal preference. Choose one and stick with that. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this video. I hope you found it somewhat useful or insightful. If you did, please do leave it a like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. My next video is going to take a much closer look at my training split. I'm going to break down my exact push-pull leg days, and I'm also going to include my program for free to download. So if you want to see that and more, make sure you subscribe. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.